We're back. Let's talk lesson 6, credit. Let me screen here. Oh yeah, share screen. It's right there. Lesson 6. I don't know what that is in French. It's seis in Spanish. Let's go slideshow. Play from the stat. Credit. Let's get into it. Oh, shit. Why do you use credit? Why? Anybody? George? Did you say something? No, I'm kidding. To avoid paying for cash or large outlays in the beginning, to meet a financial emergency, convenience, and for investment purposes. Why would you use credit for investment purposes? Obviously, if you're going to have like an investment property or a house and you don't have the cash for it, but you think, okay, I think I can make this work, that's when you use credit. Convenience. Let's go back on our way up there. Convenience. It's just, yeah, you got your card on you, your credit on you. It's convenient. Sometimes it's a financial emergency. You don't have the cash on you. I get that. And that's kind of the same as AF. That's the first one. Bad ways to use credit when you're using it to meeting basic living expenses. Once again, it's very easy to money shame people and to tell people, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this. I can't believe you did that. But for the most part, people do make the best decisions they can for themselves at that given time, right? People don't try to get into bad financial situations, but sometimes you just have to use the credit. It's either that or eat. And I get that. I understand that. Bad ways to use credit is when you're making impulsive purchases. I get into this a little bit on budgets, and this is also something in credit too. Let's say you're going to buy something and you're going to buy like a new pair of shoes or a shirt or a pair of jeans. Think to yourself, okay, if I'm going to buy these shoes, what pair of shoes am I going to throw away to justify this purchase? Or what 2 pairs of shoes would I throw away to justify this purchase? That changes the way you look at that purchase. Bad ways to use credit when you're purchasing like non-durable, short-lived goods and services. Like just like those kind of examples I was saying, t-shirt, shirt, shorts, shoes, those kind of things. It's kind of those impulsive purchases. There is on the old textbook, maximum payments, minimum payments, maximum years. There's a chart at the bottom of page 146. And that's basically, these aren't the right numbers, but let's say, for example, you owe $7,800 on a credit card and it's 15% interest. It would take you, and the minimum payment was $234 a month. And that's the minimum payment is actually 3%. That's usually how they determine what the minimum payment would be 3% of the balance. It would take you 44 months to pay that off. And you're going to end up paying almost $2,400 more than you needed to just by making the minimum payment. How do you get away from making the minimum payments? What's a good strategy to use for this? You're going to have to watch to the end. And once again, there's some really good, some of the information for the quiz is going to be based on might not be obvious in the slides, but you'll really definitely have to listen to the listen to me yap about it. Establishing credit. How do you establish credit? Start with a checking and savings account at your bank. That generally kind of gets them on the radar. And then after a certain period of time, they might offer you a credit offer. Then you can open a card. Sometimes, you might want to bite the bullet and pay the annual fee just to get that credit established. If you can't get a regular card, it's called a secured card, that's how I started my credit when I was in college. Like, college student, I didn't have any credit. I couldn't get credit. So it's one of those things that they won't give you credit because you don't have anything established, but you can't establish it because you don't have a history. So I got something called a secured card, which is it was just kind of a glorified savings account. So what I would do is I gave the bank $200 or $250. And that was basically, then I got a credit card for $250, and it was my money that I was using. But you make small purchases, you pay them off, and then over time you start getting offers for cards. You're establishing your credit. You're showing that you're responsible. For larger purchases, you can have somebody co-sign for you. So if you can buy a car or something bigger, some people can co-sign for you, but they're on the hook too. So make sure that you don't screw over those co-signers. How do you build strong credit? Essentially, you make small purchases. So let's say you want to buy that t-shirt, you want to buy those jeans, or you want to buy, lunch out. It's not a bad way to do it, but you have to make sure that this doesn't become a habitual thing and just pay off that balance at the end of the month. So if you go out and you spend $100 on random things or $100 on necessary things, just make sure you pay that balance off. And once you pay that balance off, then it shows that you're being responsible with your credit. And then over time, you'll get more offers or they'll increase your balance, which is not uncommon too. The 5 C's of credit. This is kind of what credit agencies look at for you is your character. That is essentially, your track record with how responsible you are. Your capacity. That means how much capacity do you have to take on debt? And we'll get into kind of some of those things in some of the last slides here. Collateral is, what kind of collateral do you have in case you default on any of these payments? Capital, how much money do you have as a backup? And then condition, what kind of financial condition overall are you in? So those are essentially the 5 C's of credit. Debt safety ratio, this is a big one. Okay. That's the proportion of the total monthly consumer credit obligations to monthly take-home pay, also known as your debt to income ratio. What is good? Under 15%. That means that you're not living above your means. You're not biting off more than you can chew. So basically, this is if you're bringing in, $1,000 a month, that you don't have more than $150 going out in debt. That's the simplest way to measure that. What's the highest amount you can have to purchase a home is 43%. Yes, you can purchase a home, but that interest rate you're going to get is going to be through the roof. So just let you know that. Yes, you can get the home, but that interest, it's going to cost you a lot more at that 43% threshold. Open account credit, just a form of credit extended to customers in advance of any transactions. It's kind of like almost seems like a pre-qualification for you. It's money there for you if you need it, but sometimes you don't even need it. But as long as you have that credit, that's pretty good. Bank credit cards, most popular form of an open account credit. Going back, that's just so you open the account, you have that credit, you have an open account credit. The bank credit cards, they allow you to charge purchases at any establishment that accepts credit. Line of credit, that's just the maximum amount of credit customers allowed to have outstanding at any given time. Remember, outstanding sometimes is not good. Outstanding is what you owe, but that's if you have a line of credit for $5,000, that means you can go up to $5,000 being charged on that. Cash advance, that's just a loan that can be obtained on your credit card. You should have a cash advance amount on there. And let's say your credit card, they're charging you 15% interest, but if you want to get a cash advance, it's usually going to be more. It'll be 20, 25, maybe even 30% to get cash. You can pull cash out of that card, but that cash amount that you take out is added to what you owe, is in that balance. And that's going to be at a much higher interest rate than your regular interest rate that you're being charged for to have that card. And let me just kind of take a step back here in case some of you are like, what the heck is he talking about? The interest rate is, if your interest rate is, let's say 15%, and good amounts right now, like 7-8%. Let's say, because you get started about 15%, 20%, that means for every $100, this is not just for every, it doesn't start at 100, but just for example, if you make a $100 purchase, for the ability and the privilege to use that card, since you're using their money, not your money, they're gonna charge you 15% of that. So if you make a $100 purchase, it's gonna cost you 15% of that, which would be $15 to use that card if you do not pay that balance off when it's due. So let's say you buy a pair of shoes for $100, you don't pay off that balance, then that $100 now turns into $115 essentially. So that you would owe them because you used their money to purchase something. Grace period, there's usually a 20 or 30-day grace period that you have to pay off your credit card bill to avoid paying any interest charges, like I just said. So once you go past that grace period, then you're going to start paying them money for as a way to thank them for them paying for something that you didn't have that you couldn't pay in full yourself. Special types of credit cards. There's reward cards, there's points cards, there's mileage cards, vacation cards. For a long time, I was paying off a lot of my bills and getting points. So for traveling. So I mean, when I buy gas, or buy groceries, when I pay my bills, my utility bills, I pay them on a credit card, and then at the end of the month, pay those off. So then, I would have all of these vacation points accumulated. So at the end of the year, I want to take a nice vacation. Vacation was essentially free, but you have to be extremely disciplined with that. And when I owned, have my own businesses, at a certain point you're disciplined, then things kind of are sometimes out of your control, and then you can't be as disciplined, and that's when you get in trouble. So make sure if you're doing that, you're extremely disciplined with paying those off. If you can do it right, you can really make it work to your advantage. And there's affinity cards. Also, money goes to charitable organizations. There's also something called Bankrate. It's really good to go on bankrate.com. You can find out, that's a good place to find out, bankrate.com, the best student cards, the best secured Visa cards, best cards for people with bad credit, best cards for people starting. They want to get started with credit. Those are all there, and it's all laid out for you right there. And it's really good. Bankrate.com. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. There's retail charge cards, like, if you can go to Target, get your Target card, get your Nordstrom card, those kind of things. There's a debit cards serve the same function as a credit card, but it doesn't really go anything. It's good for point of purchase, but it really doesn't build your credit responsibility. As far as credit goes, some people, we'll get into credit numbers here in a second. Don't want to get ahead of myself here. And then student credit cards marketed specifically to college students. Be careful. It used to be crazy in college campuses of people, of banks, getting students to sign up for cards. They give you like a t-shirt or something for signing up. But then the students, of course, be irresponsible and just start charging away. Next thing you know, they don't have a way to pay off those balances. So be very careful with that kind of stuff. Risky places to use debit, credit cards, outdoor ATMs, because sometimes those are not secured. Sometimes people are, hacking into those. I'm sure everybody has a story about something that happened. Make sure you protect your PIN number at gas stations. Internet, we all had stories about, and it's just, there's so many unscrupulous people out there, all over the world who are taking advantage of this, and good, honest, hardworking people. So I think we kind of all know, for the most part, how we can get screwed in these situations. And then sometimes restaurants too. Restaurants, they could be skimmers out there. You kind of have a dishonest server, or the equipment could be kind of compromised, unintended, and it could be not even to the knowledge of the people working there. Here's a credit agencies. 3 big credit agencies. Know these. These will be on the quiz and stuff. Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. They basically monitor your credit. They give you, they collect information about your credit, and then that's where you kind of go to get your credit reports. There we go. Next one is your credit score, called your FICO score. That's just FICO. Most people don't know, but the FICO stands for the Fair Isaac Corporation. Scores between 300 and 850. They don't collect data, they just give a score, right? If you want to know your score, go to annualcreditreport.com. You get 2 credit reports for free there every year. So you can kind of go in today, get one on Equifax. 6 months from now, get one from TransUnion. 6 months from then, get one from Experian. And it's absolutely free. Annualcreditreport.com. And that way you can kind of stay ahead of your credit and kind of see what's on there. And why people think, like, who cares what's on my credit? You can see something on there. It's like, I don't own a credit card. That's not me. That's something's going on here. Somebody's taking advantage of my credit. So, and then also you'll know, okay, my credit's really good, so that when I go and try to buy something, my interest rate should be a lot lower, which will end up turning into lower payments. And you end up paying less long-term because of the how your credit is. And there's some people, like there's this guy, Dave Ramsey. I highly recommend listening to Dave Ramsey. I used to have his videos on my lectures, but then I started getting emails from them that I was pirating their stuff and everything, but whatever. So I had to stop doing that. I used to have some really cool videos, like, from you too. But then if you're using them without their consent, you can never get their consent, then they start sending you nasty emails. So I kind of had to stop doing that. But in class, I would do it all the time. But Dave Ramsey's a guy who very successful, very wealthy. He does some really good personal finance classes and stuff. Highly recommend it. You know, sometimes I think he's full of it, but he's right a lot of the time. He does not have a credit score. He does not use credit at all. He is so opposed to credit. But I think part of it is because, you know, he lives in Tennessee. It's cheaper cost of living, and he's, you know, built a really good life and empire for himself. So it's easier to do that. For some people, you know, you can get to that point, but not everybody is there right now. But his whole opinion is, I don't want to owe anybody money. I should be able to pay cash for everything. And his credit score is 0 or indeterminable, whatever the thing that he says, which is a very interesting way to look at it. I don't disagree with that at all. But I think it's very difficult for some people to get to that point, but it's not unrealistic to get to that point. It's just very, very, very challenging to get there. So it's just a different way to look at credit. APR. I think in the first class I asked you, do you know who the name of the youngest Kardashian girl, Jenner, and you probably knew it, but you didn't know what APR was. APR is the annual percentage rate, or simply put, the interest rate, the money the rate that you are being charged to use somebody else's money, which would be the bank's money or the lender's money. ADB, average daily balance, that just applies the interest rate to your average daily balance over the billing period. I won't get too deep in that. Bankruptcy, and say it happens 2 ways. It happens very slow. It's just some habitual patterns that happen slowly over time. And then at the end, it's fast. It's like, okay, there's no getting out of this now. So I usually have to play like the Michael Scott video of him in The Office of, I declare bankruptcy. That's not how you do it. It's a much longer process than that. Utilization rate. This is very important. Let's say you have $10,000 of credit cards. You got $5,000 on one card. You got $2,500 on another, $2,500 on another. That's a total of $10,000. You should always try to keep that balance, what you owe, under 30%. So under $3,000, because that looks that you are being financially responsible. You haven't bitten off more than you can chew. And for other lenders and other credit opportunities too. You always look at that. Okay, what's your utilization rate? So try to keep your utilization rate under 30%. So let's say let's say you're in that scenario. You have $10,000 of credit available to you. You owe $3,000 on that credit. What would be the best way without paying? Let's say you can't pay that off. This is going to be very contrary to some people, but if you got another card for $1,000, then basically now you have $11,000 in credit, but only owe $3,000, so that your utilization rate would go under 30%. So, yeah, or you can do shifting of balances and balance transfers, that kind of stuff. So try to keep whatever you owe under 30%. That always looks really, really good on your credit. And then, how do you attack your debt? How are what you owe your credit card debt? There's 2 different rules of thumbs. One is the debt snowball, which is a Dave Ramsey thing, which I think it's a great idea. Another one is the highest interest rate, which is also not a bad idea. I guess what it comes down to is that have a strategy. Think about these things moving forward. The debt snowball is, let's say you owe $10,000 in credit, right? You owe one company one card is $6,000, the next one is $3,000, and then you have one that you owe $1,000. The debt snowball is, you look at the one with the lowest balance, the $1,000, and you just attack that. You go after that one first, while you're paying the minimums on the card that you owe $3,000 and then the card you owe $6,000 on. You attack that first card with just as much ferocity as you can, because there's a psychological component to attacking your debt, and you want to put victories on the scoreboard. So once you attack that one for 1,000, you feel great. You feel great about yourself. Like, oh my gosh, I took care of this one. Now I'm going to go after with all my intensity and ferocity and vigor of the next one, which I owe $3,000. And then you attack that one to $3,000 while still making the minimum payment on the one for 6,000. And then once you finish and you wipe out the one for 3,000, then you go after the one for 6,000. So the lowest balance, that snowball is going after the lowest balance first, or what you the one you owe the least amount on, which would be, on that scenario, if you owe $10,000 in credit, you have one for $6,000, one that you owe 3,000, and one you owe 1,000. Start with the one that you owe 1,000. That's the debt snowball. There's also a rule of thumb of you attack. Let's say that same scenario where you have a card where you owe 6,000, you owe 3,000, and then you owe 1,000. You look at the interest rate. So how much is it costing you to have those cards and to have that balance? If you had one that had an 18% interest rate, and then you had another one that had a 12% interest rate, and another one had a 15% interest rate. So you got one at 12, one at 15, and one at 18. There is a philosophy of you go after the card that has the highest interest rate first, right? So, and then once you pay that one off, you go after the one that has the next highest interest rate. So both can work. I think the debt snowball is more effective because of the psychological component of attacking your debt. But both, I like the debt snowball best, but it's the highest interest rate one is not a bad idea as well, because at least you have a strategy, you have a philosophy, you have instead of just aimlessly just paying off minimums, you have like, once again, you have a strategy, and you want to get this thing taken care of and done. So I think either one are viable. The best one that is the debt snowball though. So with that, I think that's it. All right, look for the quiz.